Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Marci tonight. Marci left an interesting comment on a video, which led me to mention it in I believe it was probably a comment video about something she's been experiencing at her house. And then she was able to reach out to me through email, and it became a very interesting conversation. She's from the northern coast of Oregon, around the Astoria area. But Marci, it's a privilege to talk to you tonight. I know we've been planning this for a while, but how are you doing tonight, Marci?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm really, this has been happening over the last few years. I believe you said 2 to 3 years, but I'm actually going to just let you go ahead and take the reins, set the stage for us about what happened in this area that you've got going on.
Okay, so I'm originally from Colorado, and I have a Jeep, and I'd always spend time like on the logging roads and the trails, and I've never had anything strange, I thought Bigfoot was I thought it was something cute, or like a Smokey the Bear sort of like friend of the forest. And I moved here to Oregon in February of 2021, and my area, it's a very small town. It's like 6,000 people. We have, a neighborhood, but between our little neighborhoods, there's large swatches of forests. So when I first moved here, my front yard there's a huge river, and then there's a forest, and I didn't have time to go explore that forest yet while I was unpacking, but I noticed that there were like yelling. I couldn't really, at first I thought it was like humans that were fighting, like screaming, yelling. At times it sounded like people were being like mauled to death. It was startling, and it would go on and on. Sometimes the sound would almost go into a dog sound. And so I maybe assumed that it would upset the neighborhood dogs, but I heard it a lot. And then I would hear gunshots. And so I was like, well, maybe that's what people in Oregon do. I mean, I think I was just really naive. And then, about a month after living here, I finally went to explore that forest, and I realized this forest is huge, and there's no houses around here, and really there's water that divides the forest from my house. And I mean, I've yelled to my son through there, and sound doesn't really travel. So I realized that what was happening in that forest was loud. And, I told some people about it, and then I had a friend come and stay with me, and she smoked cigarettes. So she would hear it, and she'd come running in, and she was like, that's weird. That's not right. I don't know what that is. And every time, it sounded like fighting or something, like screaming. And I heard it a lot. And then I started noticing there were patterns to it, the screaming, the yelling. It would happen a lot when it wasn't raining. I noticed that it was on warmer nights. I noticed it didn't really matter so much the time of the year. It was more of the weather. And then I just kept documenting it. But then I also noticed, so we have a really big Coast Guard here, and I noticed helicopters would come out. And always at night, they would be, circling around these forests. And I just thought, I didn't know. I mean, I was so naive. I came from a landlocked town to this ocean town, and I asked my neighbor, I was like, what are these helicopters doing out at night? And there were the Black Hawk, the double, I think that's what they're called, the double blades on the top, like the military ones, and they would just hover. And she was like, they're just, I don't know, they do what they do. So that was another pattern that I started to notice, is when that activity would, all that yelling, screaming, whooping is what, I mean, I've listened to a lot of the sounds now, and I can tell you that it sounds exactly like some of the sounds that these people are recording on your podcast, different podcasts. And that gives me chills. It's pretty scary. But I believe that, I think the government knows about this because Homeland Security, I noticed on our CAD calls, which is like our police departments, people do report some of this screaming activity. And I noticed Homeland Security checks in, and then I noticed the helicopters. And I've woken up where the helicopter is directly above my house. And I don't know if you've ever been close to a helicopter. I've never been close to one before, but it feels like an earthquake. It is loud. Your house shakes. It is startling. And I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and this helicopter is above my house. And I noticed, it slowed down, but there were periods, where it gets crazy and then it slows down and then it gets crazy. Well, okay, so my girlfriend and I, we hike a lot through these, well, we used to. I don't go out in the forest at all anymore, but I hike through the forest. And before, I think if I heard a whoop beforehand, I probably would have never noticed it. And that's because it wasn't on my radar. But one thing that I would notice is the tree cracks. I would hear like a whack, a really loud whack, and then I look around and a tree would fall. And oftentimes it was, there would be a lot of hedges. It's pretty thick through here, but there would be hedges, and I wouldn't be able to see which exact area the tree was falling from. So that happened to me a couple times. And then out in this forest by my house, we have annual salmon runs, and we get a lot of fishermen coming for that. And they will set up campgrounds like over by that forest. And so often I'll go out there the next day, they will completely abandon that, all of their stuff, like nice stuff, like hammocks, nice tents. And it just sits out there until somebody takes it down. So I don't know why they're rushing out. I have a pretty good idea why. But so all of this is happening. And then I noticed for a while I was getting like bangs on my house. And I thought it was like paranormal. I just didn't know what this was. And at my windows it's all my windows, I have a sliding glass door in my living room, and then a glass window right next to the sliding door. I would find like dead squirrels or chipmunks, and they wouldn't be punctured. They were crushed. So like their bodies were crushed. So something squeezed them. And I still find that quite a bit all around, like just my windows though, not like out in the middle of the yard. It like something was almost looking in my windows. So it's just been a lot of that. But then let me see the exact date. I sent you, I don't know if you got a chance to look at the video that I recorded, but so I had been talking to my friend Caleb about some of this stuff, and he was like, Marci, you need to start recording because, you just need to record it. And I think when you're in the minute, like you don't think about recording. But okay, so last August, August 24th, so a few days leading up to August 24th, around 1 a.m., I would say, I would hear, oh God, it was like, I knew it was bipedal, like it had two legs. I could hear something walking past my house. And all I could think of is, that is a monster. I felt paralyzed when I heard it. It was like you could hear the steps. I knew they were heavy. And then there was almost like labored breathing. And, I would say I've never heard a grizzly bear, but I mean, it sounded heavier than even like a bear. And it was just like, boom. And then I have a German Shepherd. She would look out the window and she would just bark and bark. And then a whiff, like a smell would come in through the bedroom. And I've heard people describe the smell as a wet dog, but I don't think it smells like a wet dog. I think it smells like raw sewage or something, like very toxic. It smelled so bad. And so but I was not going to look out the window. I mean, I'm a single girl. Like, I live in this house. I don't know what that is. It's something that you could never even imagine. I can't even believe that I heard those sounds. I can't really believe any of this, really. But so that, I hear the walking, and I smell the smell again the following night. And then I heard like my trash can lids lifting. And then maybe 1 or 2 nights after that, and this really bothers me, and I probably think about this, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a day, but I don't know what started first. So, and I'm talking about when my house got attacked with the apples. I don't know if my dog started barking and then the apples started being thrown, or if the apples started being thrown and then my dog started barking. But on August 24th, I was in my room and I was reading a book, and all of a sudden, my house it's 2 stories. The top floor, it's pretty high up. I'm not really good with measurements, but I mean, you could stand on top of a full ladder and you'd reach my top windows. You'd probably have to reach it a little bit. It's a very tall house. So all my windows were open. It was hot. It was the summer. I always felt pretty safe in this neighborhood too. So I even left like my sliding glass door open, and I had the screen closed. And so on August 24th, exactly 1:00 a.m., I just heard like boom. It was like the hits, they were hitting so hard. And my dog, she just started freaking out. Like, she's whimpering. I remember her it wasn't in the room that I was in, which was facing the front of the house, this side of my house, and on the back of my house. And so the apples, I didn't know they were apples at the time. I just thought something was banging on my house. They were hitting my windows and hard. So I could hear the sound, the hollowy sort of ring. And I was like, that it's going to break the windows. Like, it went on for a solid 5 minutes and then silence. And my dog started, she's looking out the windows, she's running all over. And I am just sitting there. Like, I didn't move. I was just in shock. And I think, I like in my mind, I was thinking, this is crazy. I thought it was like a paranormal thing. I don't know why I didn't call the police. I didn't think something was hitting my house from the outside. But so I just sat there in shock, just like waiting for the sounds again. And it just went completely silent. And then about 5 minutes later, it would start again. It wasn't as hard as the first time. There weren't as many apples hitting, but they were still hitting the upstairs windows. And I don't even have an apple tree in my yard, I'll explain that in a little bit. But so, again, a barrage of apples. It was like a full-blown assault. And then it stopped. And then at that point, I just sat. I'm thinking, if somebody's outside, maybe at this point, I'm starting to think if somebody's outside, my door is open downstairs, and then they're going to see me. Somebody's going to see me if they're outside. And so then I just stayed still. And then one last time, and I finally pulled out my phone, and I'm like, I just need to record these sounds. That third barrage of apples was not as extreme as the first one. And then it stopped, and everything was silent. I really didn't hear anything after that. There were a few bangs, but they were different. They sounded different, and they were lower. So about 3 hours later, I finally crawled out of the area. I got my flashlight, turned on all the lights, and I just started looking around. And I let all my dogs out, and I went outside, and I saw apples all over. And I was just in shock. One, I didn't know where the apples came from. Two, that's what was hitting my house. I mean, I was just in shock. Like, I couldn't piece together, like, how could this have happened? Why would this have happened? What is going on around here? You know, and when I saw how many apples were thrown, I counted over, there's like 68 apples thrown at my house. I mean, they were hitting so hard, they were flying into my neighbor's yard, like hitting off the house into the neighbor's yard. Well, then I realized my neighbor, she has an apple tree in her yard, and it's more, you know, it's her house is pretty far from me. So I've told people about this, and they're like, oh, it was the wind did not pick up apples and throw them over a fence up maybe 30 feet high I mean, one after the other with that amount of force. I have fiber cement siding on my house, which is basically cement. So those apples were flattened on one side, and they were hard apples. They were hard hits. And the next morning, first thing is, as soon as I woke up, I went to my neighbor's house and I knocked on her door, and she has a camera on the side of her house. And I told her what had happened, and I showed her the video, and she came and looked at the apples with me, and we took the apples over and we compared them to her tree. And she looked over her camera footage on the side of the house, and she caught a doe, a young female doe, at 1 a.m. So that's all she got. Then her camera system completely blacked out. There's nothing on it. And I still didn't know it was Bigfoot. Like, that's what's so crazy about this is I was like, it's a monster. It's a monster. Something, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what this is. Like, I mean, I never believed in it. I didn't know that people really believed in it. I thought it was like something silly. I never listened to podcasts, nothing. And then, so yeah, we looked over her video footage, and there was a deer. So after a while, I finally, I opened up about it to one of my friends who lives in Astoria, and he was like, that's Bigfoot. And I was like, I just started laughing. I was like, no way. Like, what is, and he was like, no, that's Bigfoot. You need to start listening. And then he pointed me to some of the podcasts. And once I started listening, I started being able to piece everything together. And this whole time, it's just so obvious that this is a real living, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a gorilla. I don't know if it's some kind of human. I don't know what it is, but it's real. And a bear did not throw apples at my house. A human definitely did not throw apples at my house. I know 2 people in my neighborhood, and they're both adults. They have careers. There's a police station down the street from my house. If I called the police, they would probably be here in a minute. I don't imagine somebody standing outside for 20 minutes collecting apples and then throwing them, I can't imagine that. Not to mention the smell, the sounds, everything I've heard in the forest, the tree breaks, and after the apple incident, things have actually calmed down here. I'm nosy in that now I look at the Warrenton, Astoria police department, I look at the CAD reports because I look at what people, I like to see what people are reporting. And a couple of weeks ago, I noticed there was a call of a woman screaming. There's now a woman missing in my neighborhood, and the helicopters were out in the forest. You can look it up for yourself. It's all right there. A detective, I finally put a camera in front of my house, and that might be why this has stopped, because I did hear that if you leave your lights on, if you put cameras out, it will stop. And that's true. It will stop. But a detective actually asked me for some camera footage from around that time, it was just only a few weeks ago. So, I think this, the Chinook tribe, that was the tribe that was here. They say that their people there, it's another tribe that these Sasquatch, and I think Sasquatch, I can't remember what they call it, but they say that, they're real. They're here. I think I've noticed in the forest behind my house, which I used to go there all the time. I don't go there anymore, but I've noticed under really large trees, there's holes dug. So in my mind, I think, well, maybe that's how they hide so well, is they might be going underground. But it's all speculation now. So, I mean, that's the bulk of my experience. I don't want any more experiences. I tell them very lighthearted, but they were terrifying. They were haunting. Like, I was in tears, especially when it walked by my house. I was definitely really upset during and after the apples. And I even still have nightmares about it. It was just so scary, and being alone, and like me moving here, like I have, only 4 friends in this area. So I don't even know anybody. So, and it, like for a human to attack a house, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would nobody even knows me? So yeah, I always go back to, did my dog piss this thing off barking at it out the window? Or was it interested in, maybe I've heard they're interested in women, maybe because I'm a single woman here. Maybe, that's what I'm left with. And I just try to piece it together. And now I'm just very careful. I don't go out in the forest. I don't camp. I don't do anything around here. I just don't.
Marci, such an incredible account. And I don't know how I would have handled that myself, my house being under attack at 1 a.m. And then it sounds like you didn't really move for 3 hours until 4 a.m. And then you started, moving around, turning on lights, things like that. But that's absolutely horrifying. I definitely have some questions for you about all this, if that's all right. You said there were about 68 apples outside. Someone's probably curious, what kind of apples were they?
Well, oh gosh, they're half green, half pink. Maybe they weren't like the big ones like the Fuji's. I would say like gala apples.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did any of them have bite marks out of them, or it's finger marks, like something had really grasped onto it and left maybe like a finger indentation in any of them?
I wish that I would have examined them more, but again, I still wasn't thinking like Bigfoot. I didn't notice that. I noticed that the apples were in decent condition, but they definitely had some dents in them, probably from maybe the hit.
You mentioned that there's been times where you've had dead squirrels and chipmunks crushed by your windows, which is really interesting, because I'm just going to say a side observation for a minute. Not the first thing I've heard where there's been animals that have been crushed by suspected Bigfoot. I've got reports where, grizzly bear have been found with their necks broken, foxes that have been crushed almost like their bodies were wrung. Even there's a report of the hunter that was found in Talladega National Forest in Alabama, where it was pretty much found with everything was popped out of his joints. So that's a very interesting addition to the mental folder I have of different creatures being crushed, and that doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't. Ever since I put cameras out and I turn on the lights, I mean, this is like a span over a week. I don't, it's just so weird because there were so many and all at just the windows and just for that period of time. And like when you pick up like the animal, I've never, these squirrels were beautiful. When you pick them up, you could just feel that they were crushed. And I looked for puncture wounds. I thought, maybe an animal is living around here and chomping on these things, but they looked like they were sleeping, but just smashed.
So you couldn't tell if their necks were broken, the head was facing opposite direction than it should be, anything like that?
I mean, there were, yeah, it's just, like they're when I picked them up, I realized they were just so limp. Like rigor mortis, I've seen a dead animal before, and rigor mortis wasn't a factor in it because they were just so, just crushed up, like squishy. I don't know how to explain it really. Like you could tell that their bodies were broken.
Could you tell if it was a situation where maybe it was thrown against the house or it was left there, maybe some sort of gifting situation?
That's actually a really good question. I haven't thought about that. To me, it felt, I don't know. And see, that's something that bothers me a lot too, because it goes back to the question, was it targeting me or was it targeting my dogs? And maybe, it was trying to lure dogs out, or maybe it was like a hunting strategy to get a hold of them. Because, so I actually have 3 dogs, and if a doe or anything walks by here, they're so annoying. Their heads are out the window, yapping. So I don't know if it was like messing up maybe the way that it hunted, or it's just obnoxious. I don't know. Yeah, that's hard for me because I go back and forth all the time.
It's just, man, there's a lot of questions I have about this one, because it's like, if they were chucking apples at your house, who's to say they weren't, chucking squirrels and chipmunks? Maybe they couldn't get close enough to leave it there because you've got the dogs, the 3 dogs, but a lot of speculation there as well. But at any time, did you see any weird footprints or any indentations around the house, maybe by where those chipmunks were found?
Well, one thing that I did notice is where the chipmunks were found, there was like the dirt right there just all of a sudden was like really disrupted. So it was grass. And I noticed, this sounds so weird, there's a path. And this house, when I moved in, I don't think I noticed that there was a path, but now there's like this weird sort of trail from the front yard to that window in the backyard. And so I didn't see footprints, but I noticed a path had been formed. And I don't walk that path. It's a weird path. And so that I thought that was really interesting. It's right next to the house. So that's really weird. It's not like along the fence, like my dogs did it. And I noticed scrapes on the wood fence, but I wish that I would have known about Bigfoot and like some of the information that people are putting out there, because I think I definitely would have contacted the BFRO immediately. I feel like that was such a, I feel like that was such a waste. Like, not a waste, but I feel like there could have been so much evidence gathered in that moment, and during that week especially, that now, like, I found out too late about this.
Well, I wouldn't beat yourself up about it, but you can only do the best that you can, and you were trying to figure it out and get through back to normal life. But so you said a beat down path. Did you say from the woods to your window?
The front of my house, in the front of my house, there's my driveway and there's cement. And then along the house, very close to the house though, something sneaky. That's how close there's a path that it must have been stamping down the grass. I don't know how long it's been coming around that corner. and then she's right up against the house. And then that window is right in the backyard on that same corner. So it's like just this line, and it's one path. There's no other paths in my yard. It's just where that one window is. So, I mean, it just gives me the chills thinking maybe something was like looking in this window in my living room. And I definitely close my blinds before it gets dark. I feel like I live a little bit like shuttered, like in almost a prison. Like at night, I will not go outside. If I have to get something from the store after dark, like I don't want to go out to my Jeep. I don't want to. If I have to go, I have to absolutely go. I will run to my Jeep, run. And I mean, just hearing it walk, I think that alone, no way. That is so terrifying.
How wide is that trail that was beat down by your house?
It's only about, it's about maybe not 3 feet, maybe about a foot and a half.
Okay.
It's small. Yeah.
You said you talked to your one neighbor that was associated with the apple tree. Did you talk to any other neighbors to see if they've ever had anything's happen in your neighborhood about potential Bigfoot interactions?
No, I really want to approach the neighbor across from me. I think he might have had an interaction the other night. He was out in his truck, and he's a very sane older man, very kind. He lives right on that river, and he was out there just yelling and honking his horn. And he was like, "Get out of here!" like yelling at something. And then the police were at his house the following day, just, "Hey, how's it going? What's going on?" You know, I think people around here know what's going on. I think I would love to go out and talk to the neighbors, but I don't ever know how to approach it or notice anything weird around here. I mean, I've been laughed at when I've talked about this to some of my friends, and it's just, for me, I mean, you're laughing at me. Me telling you this story, one, it's just bizarre. Two, I was terrified, and it's unvalidating. But three, it's really not funny. It's not funny. It's a real thing. And when you experience it for yourself and you actually listen to what people go through, like I listened to your Oak Ridge episode, and like tears started coming down my eyes, because I just think that is, if I would have seen it, I don't think I'd ever be okay again. They're scary.
That's a tough episode. Yeah. The Oak Ridge one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just as sorry that you have to go through people making fun of you for this. You didn't ask for this to happen to you, and now you have to deal with, just trying to get back into normal life. Yeah, that's terrible. When over the last few years, was there any point when you would hear sounds outside, or when you're out in the forest, things like that, stuff that didn't really belong, just weird sounds at all?
Well, after I started recognizing the sounds, yes, I hear them all the time. I can recognize now what the tree, I wouldn't say they're tree knocks, I would say they're tree cracks. Like, they're very loud. I hear that. Sometimes you can hear them hollering. I think they fight with each other, or maybe it sounds like they fight. So I think sometimes maybe another one might come in, or maybe they're hunting. I don't know. I hear the yelling, and it sounds like a man, but it sounds like a dog. It sounds very much like a mix of animals. It sounds human, but so much louder. I hear that mostly a lot at night. I hear it all the time. But I don't think I've heard like a quiet, like a day whoop, but I can now recognize, like, I do hear, I wouldn't say it's a whoop. I'd say it's like, I don't know if that, it doesn't really do it justice, but it doesn't sound like a whoop to me.
That's really interesting. Do you ever hear anything that sounds like a baby crying?
I don't know. My neighbors have a brand new baby. No, I've never, but like I said, so there's right across the Columbia River There is a forest over there, and it's called Cape Disappointment. In Cape Disappointment, I've heard the same sort of sounds, like the yelling. I've heard that weird chattery sound where it sounds like they're speaking a different language. I've actually heard that while I was in my living room. And I had that window open, and I've heard it almost sounds like a chanting or a mumble or very quietly. It was right behind me. And for a minute, I was like, am I hearing things? And then it stopped as soon as I took alert to it. And I look outside, I don't see anything. And then it stopped. So I've heard that chattering. But in that forest over there, at Cape Disappointment, I've gotten 10 feet in that forest and had tree cracking and breaking. Nonstop. And it was enough to make me leave. I was like, I don't want a tree to fall on my head. Maybe this forest is, so.
From your living room, you're hearing what sounds like language out in the woods?
One time, and it was not in the woods, it was in my backyard.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was something you can't understand it. It's like a foreign language, and it's just quiet, whispery sort of chatter.
Is it have you heard the Sierra sounds at all?
Well, I've listened, I don't know. Do you have it?
I don't have it, but you did say, can you explain a little bit more when you said it sounded like a foreign language? Explain what that means.
It sounded, okay, I'll try to do it.
Okay.
It sounds like this. It's it was very quiet. You could tell it was talking, but you couldn't make out the words. But maybe Latin, a quiet Latin sound, but I didn't understand. And it was just it's pretty scary. It's very creepy. It's a creepy sound. And it's at night, of course. At night, 11 to 1 a.m.
Wow. That lines up with things I've heard over the years to do with people hearing what they think is Bigfoot language. After your interactions, at any point did you start to have affected dreams at all?
Well, I've had nightmares, but that's pretty much it. I was getting sleep paralysis around that time as well, which is something I've never had before.
Was that before or after, or just during?
It was before, pretty much from when I started moving in. When I moved in here about, a few weeks after I moved in here, that started. And then the sounds out there, it's been interesting living here. There's something, I don't know what it is about Oregon and this land, or I lived in Colorado. Like I said, I've been all over Colorado. I have never experienced anything like this.
Was the house vacant before you bought it?
There was one person that lived here before me, and it's a brand new house. My neighbor scared me, and she was like, I think that when the house was built, they pulled up a bunch of animal bones. So that's just something she told me. And I asked her what kind, and she was like, I don't know. I just saw that there were bones being pulled out, which weirds me out.
Pulled out of the house or?
The ground, when they were getting ready to do the concrete.
Really? Oh boy.
Yeah. So I don't know anything about that though.
I know this. It can be. If you don't want to talk about this specific thing, you don't have to. But can you go into any more detail about the sleep paralysis and how that happened, right after you moved in, things like that?
Well, it kind of started off. The sleep paralysis, it started off slow. And what happened was, it's actually very weird. I would go to sleep, and it was like fall asleep, and then in your dream, you fall asleep again. And at that time, I did have a weird dream. And it was, I would say, an out-of-body experience. So I could tell you about that dream if you want. It's very odd. It creeped my grandma out. It involved her, and it just really weirded her out. And then I would wake up, and I would think I was awake, but but then I'd snap awake again. So sleep paralysis is like you wake up twice. So you wake up into your dream and you're like, oh, I'm awake. And you literally say, I'm awake. And then something will wake you up and your body is still, you cannot just wake up. You can't just get up. It's like your body is so heavy. Like you could just move your eyes and you really can't make out words yet. I think it's like close to being dead. I don't know, but that's what it reminded me of. And it's very scary. I didn't see anything. Like I've heard of people seeing different entities and shadow people around that experience. I never saw any of that. But I did see something like that when I was awake, wide awake.
Sorry, so you said you saw something like a shadow person when you were awake?
Yes, 100%. I saw it. I saw a shadow person. Yes.
Same time period?
It was right after I moved in here.
So just to try to get a timeline, so you moved in, started having sleep paralysis, you saw a figure around the house, and then after that, the Bigfoot related type things started happening as well?
Yes, so I saw the shadow figure. I saw it once, wide awake. I was working, sitting at my desk. I saw a shadow figure. It had a chin. It looked like it had a hood. It was not incredibly huge. It was about 4 feet tall. I saw it run and it ran fast. And my first thought is, holy crap, do I have a vitamin deficiency? And so I started taking all these vitamins and I was like, man, that's not good. What's happening? And it was weird. There's this thing that happens where it's almost like you're sort of in a dream state. Like it gives you like a foggy brain. And then I started taking my vitamins and I'm totally fine. I'm normal. Like I'll go surfing. I ride my bike all the time. I'm not a drug addict. I don't smoke pot. I don't drink. My lifestyle is, it's very clean. I live very clean. And so I saw the shadow thing. And then about 3 or 4 days later, I saw the shadow thing again. And then my girlfriend was here for the week and she was helping me unpack. And then we heard mimicking sound that sounded like my son in his voice. And he wasn't home. And it was at night and it said my name. But it wasn't exact. It sounded like it was like a recording almost. And that really freaked her out. She got really scared. She's, I don't know how you can live in this place. I don't know how you can live in this house. It was the same lady that smoked cigarettes that I told you about that heard the sounds outside. So she experienced a lot of this with me on and off. We also saw orange orbs in the sky, like in the forest. We saw them. And what's weird is I noticed a while ago, like right after I moved in with the orange orbs, you can only see them through your phone screen. Sometimes you can only see them through your phone screen. And it's so weird how we stumbled on that. It was that same, my friend, she was like, oh, I want to see what the stars look like. And we were FaceTiming and, she was like, I love Oregon so much. And, and I was like, oh, do you want to see? And so I like put her on, we were on FaceTime and I like flipped the phone around and I was looking through the screen and then I looked with my eyes and I looked through the screen and I'm like, what is that orange thing? And she's like, that orange thing? And I was like, yeah, I can't see that with my regular eyes. And she was like, and I was like, no, I can't see it with my regular eye, And I mean, it was really weird. And then all of a sudden, boom, it went off, turned off. And she was like, what the heck? What is happening in Oregon? So I've seen that I've seen that 4 times. It left me feeling really afraid again. It's a doom feeling, like you're, like there's doom and gloom that's going to happen to you when you see these things. And then the Bigfoot stuff started. Like right after that, the stomping, the walking by stomping, it sounded like, I don't know, like stomping, I would say.
Did weird stuff happen when you moved to Oregon? Did you have weird stuff happen in Colorado too?
No, I never did.
Wow.
Never.
It just all went crazy once you moved into this house.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Ever since that Apple incident with the cameras, I don't have any of the stuff anymore. I don't I'm not going to go out in the forest. I'm not going to test it. I'm going to take this seriously. I've seen David Pilates and the missing 411. I see the CAD calls. I know that, there are things going on around here, and it's not always reported. And, it doesn't get a lot of media attention. And I think the government knows about these things. And I don't know why there's not disclosure. Maybe because people will come out and look for them. I don't know. I think about that all the time as well. But I feel that they're dangerous. I mean, I don't think that, hearing people's stories, like, nobody's going to be friends with one of those. No way. It feels dangerous. Very dangerous.
Wow. I'm just glad you're at the point where you've got the camera up and it seems like you're not having to deal with anything as of this time.
I am too. I mean, I do enjoy it. I wish that, I wish more people would just come forward and talk about it. But at the same time, it's interesting because I was this girl that was like, I wonder if UFOs are real. Let's go look at the stars. Let's go sit on top of the Jeep. Like this daydreamer. And I feel like maybe you have to be careful what you ask for, because then coming here and experiencing all of this, it's just such a mystery. Is it this location? Did I do something to, was I asking for this? It's just so many questions. And
how long have you been trying to see if you could experience something in your life?
Well, I would say I've always been like a stargazer, always, but I think I started thinking about UFOs and probably around 2017 when I got my Jeep and I could go on trails and like backcountry and, hang out like with the top off. And so, yeah, we'd watch every astral event that's happening. And, but yeah, I think it's probably moving here. I think there's something about Oregon.
Yeah. That's what I hear. The people I talk to that are associated with Oregon, you guys have some wild stuff that happens out there. And yeah, I'm excited to go out to Oak Ridge and end of next month. So that'll be a good time. But
is it for the festival?
Yeah, it is. Yep. I will be there.
Yeah, I think I saw it. Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. So, that's pretty much it. As far as my encounters, there's so many of them as far as like the sounds, but it's just the same sort of stuff over and over.
Marci, I'm glad that you reached out to me and that we were able to have a chat about what you've experienced. And end of the day, I'm just glad that you were able to get it out there. So maybe people that are experiencing similar things can come forward as well. They can reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Yeah. And again, it just feels good to get it out there from what I know.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
No, it really does. And I appreciate your show so much. And it's helped me a lot. And I thank you for just being so kind and believing in this and hearing people and having people on. You're doing good work.
Thank you. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out, trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code Bigfoot Society, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So Code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerFest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. Here at Bigfoot Society, we're headed to the moon, and here's a current update about going full-time. So here we go. As of 5/22, we are now at 202 patrons out of 824 needed. That's 24.51%, almost a quarter of the way there, guys. Brings us down to 622 left to join the Patreon. So a huge thank you to Barbara, Gregory, Dana, Craig, Jeff, Steve, Ricky D, Norm, Megan, Dan, Daddy Chatty, Joe, Eber, Ike, Jules, Josh, Ryan, Todd, Nathan, Gabe, Bill, Lucky, Megan, William, Bobby Joe, and Inger for joining recently. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.
Wait, there's more. Monster Fest 2 is coming up soon in beautiful Canton, Ohio, and I will be there doing a live podcast. If you've ever wanted to meet Bigfoot Society in person, this is the year to do it. My special guest in the live podcast episode will be Justin from Cryptids of the Corn. You will not want to miss this live episode. And then you can hang out with me at Monster Fest. You can go to smalltownmonsters.com to get your tickets. Pre-sale tickets are $20.50, and tickets at the door will be $25. But kids 12 and under are free. How many places can you go to where kids 12 and under are free? Not many. New this year are the live workshops. I'm excited about this. Extremely excited. How to cast a footprint. How to collect DNA in the woods. Ghost hunting tools 101. How to do research. Also, there's going to be food trucks outside this year, and new guests, new speakers, people you won't. I mean, the coolest thing about last year is that I got to meet people I was not expecting to be there. People like Les Odell, John Hickenbottom, really cool Bigfoot people that I never would have thought that I would have met before, and Seth Breedlove made it happen by making this incredible place for the community to get together. Monster Fest in Canton, Ohio, June 28th through 29th. Guys, do not miss this year. If you missed last year, don't miss this year. Head on over right now to smalltownmonsters.com. I hope to see you there.